Deconverted Man here. Consider this a follow-up to my last lecture-ish thing that I did. In that video, I laid out some reasons that we should be skeptical of God, in my view. And in the comment section, dun dun dun, there was a disagreement. Oh, let's look at it, shall we? Billy Lee, who is not my lover. He's just a kid. Sorry. If you're an honest man, you'll answer this. How many coincidences before it's mathematically impossible? So, he said only a childlike mind and understanding would find this informative. You never challenge the actual proof of the higher command. What proofs? Of course, he didn't provide the proofs. He just said this. So, yeah, there's so many problems with this statement. If you're an honest man, so it's already loading into the question that you must answer this question if you're honest. If you don't answer, then you're dishonest. Well, the honest answer is I don't know. And the question is so malformed that it can't be answered. How many coincidences before it's mathematically impossible? Well, doesn't matter. Mathematically impossible doesn't mean that it's actually impossible. If it's actually impossible, then it doesn't happen. But the odds could be a Googleplex to 1, and that's still possible because you have 1. Now, at some point, you could declare that it's mathematically impossible, but how would you determine that? And why would it matter if you still have the 1? It's something maybe useful in probability, but that doesn't always apply to reality. So, what are the chances of X? How do we figure that out? What do we look at when we're looking at the odds? If we roll a 1d6, we have a 1 in 6 chance of it landing on any number. If we roll 2 of them, we still have a 1 in 6 chance of them landing on different numbers. But because of the dots, we will more often than not, if we roll them enough times, get the number 7 on a bell curve than any other number that we roll. 2 and 12 will be the least rolled over time. And if we were to roll 4d6s, the odds would change. And if you rolled the dice, and then after you finished rolling the dice, you said, okay, I had a 5, I had a 4, I had a 3, I had a 6. Now, what are the odds of getting those numbers? Well, each one individually is 1 in 6, but then you add them together, and you get a big number, and you go, wow, that's amazing. How did I get that big number? And that's just how probability works, but it doesn't tell you anything about anything. The chance could be insane that you would roll that, but yet you rolled it. All right, hopefully not getting too morbid, but let's look at the lifetime odds of death in the United States. This was 2018, so it might be more, it might be a little bit less, but it's pretty good amount. So you have a 1 in 6 chance of dying by heart disease. Yeah, I don't like that. That's not very good, but here I am. I'm talking right now, so I've beaten those odds. And I've beaten the odds against cancer and all preventable causes of death, whatever that is, and chronic lower respiratory disease and suicide and opioid overdose and motor vehicle crash and fall and gun assault and so on and so forth. I have beaten every single one of these odds, and here I am. So if we added all that up, it'd be some stupidly big number, and you're here too. So you also beat those odds. Wow, Amazing. What does that mean? Diddly squat. That's what it means. But, let's go ahead. Let's just say, okay, theist. All right, apologist. You want us to say, well, but look at all these coincidences that things just fell into place as if that's how things really work, which it's not. But, okay, sure. All right. Very simple question. Let's apply the same sort of idea, the same sort of thinking that you're using here to ask me the question of what are the odds of this occurring in this such way on its own or unguided or however you want to put it. Okay. What are the odds that you have the actual correct God? Well, let's see. Now, obviously, you can disagree with this because it's from an atheism website. This comes from atheismwiki.org. So, how many different gods are there? And they have different mathematics, and they figure, they get to that there's at least 440 deities per religion, and that means there's this number of different god versions, give or take. Something like that. So you have a 1 in this number chance of having the actual god. But let's lowball it. Let's just say that it was 1 in 1,000. Or let's lower it all the way down to 1 in 6, just like the odds of the heart attack. Now, eventually, we know, as a matter of fact, that all of us have 100% chance of eventually expiring off this mortal coil. Unless science can figure out how to stop that, which would be really nice. But without that, we have a certainty that our time here will end. So, what certainty is there that we have that you happen to have picked the right God? And that's not even counting all the gods that ever existed throughout time, gods that we don't have records of. Now, yes, we have Zeus and Jupiter and things like this, but we don't have all the gods. We don't know of all the gods. So, what are the odds that you happened to find the right God to believe in? Couldn't even calculate it because you wouldn't even know the number. You'd have to guess. 1 in 1,000, 10,000, 20,000, 50,000? At what point does it become mathematically impossible that you selected the wrong God? But if there is a God, then you might have gotten it right. But what if that God is not like any other gods that humans have come up with? Then you got it wrong. But maybe that doesn't matter. Only the gods that care if you believe in them or not really matter, at least on some sort of panic level. Existential crisis is created because this God demands that you believe in it, or else, or it wants you to believe in it, and then it will give you this nice, wonderful thing. And so in those cases, you could say, well, let's just narrow down to those gods. And then you have what? How many gods left? 3, 4, 10? I don't know. But the odds still are against it. Because it might be something completely different than that. Of course, my question would be, why would God care if I believe in it or not? What does God need with my belief? But the odds are not something that we can really figure out in this sense. All the different particles and molecules that make up my body currently, if you were to take every odds of all of those coming to be part of me, well, it's mathematically improbable that I should exist in this format. And nonetheless, it's impossible that you exist and everyone exists. And you could rewind it so that everything is impossible, including God, if you use this sort of probability argumentation, which is why you shouldn't. And of course, by doing so, you commit logical fallacies, which are the appeal to ignorance. I don't know how all of this universe came to be this way, so there has to be an order to it, and that means there's a God, because the God is the thing that makes it have order. Okay, so does the God have order? Well, yes. Okay, well, what are those chances that it has order on its own without any guidance? Well, that's different because, right, you run into a problem. You now need special pleading for the sort of God that produces an ordered universe, but that God doesn't need to have anything that made it orderly. It just is orderly by nature of itself. Well, then why isn't the universe that way? Why couldn't the universe be orderly to some degree, although it's not quite orderly? It's actually becoming rather non-orderly over time, and this is entropy. So what then can we do about this argument? Rather than appealing to bizarre, insane numbers, and this is something that apologists have done many times. The size of our solar system just as a base, and then you calculate that and you say, okay, if the entire universe were filled with our types of solar systems, what would the odds be of life appearing in those other solar systems? There's no way to know. You don't know. You can't figure that out because you have one example. You have this planet and this solar system. And if you had the duplicate solar system, then I guess the odds would be 100%. If it happened once, why wouldn't it happen again? If it can happen at all. But there's simply no way to calculate. And you go, well, what about the universe? What are the odds? You can't calculate that either. It's impossible. You don't even know where to begin. So other logical fallacy that this might be committing is appeal to personal incredulity of, I can't understand or I can't accept that a universe could come together on its own, unguided. Well, it doesn't matter if you can or can't accept that, because it might be the case. Now, maybe it's not. We don't know. That's the honest answer. So, this line of argumentation is fallacious. Because of that, we should drop that argument because it's not going to convince anybody, and we're going to have to continue to be skeptical of your conclusions. You didn't give us evidence. You didn't give us proof. You didn't give us anything. You just asked a question. I don't know the answer to the question, and that's the honest truth. But he didn't like that answer. It's also interesting that he didn't offer the proofs of this higher command, whatever that means. If you have the proofs, well, what do you mean? Because proofs is only in mathematics, as far as I know. I suppose you could have proofs in science or something. I don't know. But 1 in a billion coincidence can happen before you say that's impossible? No, I wouldn't say anything is impossible if it happens. If it can't happen, then that's impossible. But one in whatever the number is, as long as you have one, then it's not impossible. 0 in a million bazillion chance. 0 and 1 chance. Well, then you have 0, so you don't have a chance. So then it's impossible. He makes other claims that I could go on. The idea that the improbable happens all the time is actually true. There's millions of us humans and millions of animals and insects and all sorts of things moving around, and it is probable that in your lifetime something that you can't really explain will happen to you or to somebody that you know. That you will see something that you don't understand or can't explain. That you will experience something weird or bizarre. That this is just how things are. Now, what you get is, if you have a publication like Midnight Star or whatever, and they collect stories submitted, they pick the most juiciest stories of the people that make various claims about weird things that happen to them, and then, well, it seems like weird things are happening all the time to people, but no, on the average day that you have, it's normal. There's nothing weird that happens to you day to day. So that's the normal, mundane life that we usually have. But eventually, if you live long enough, something odd is bound to occur. But it only seems odd to you because you're not looking at all the other millions of people who also probably had an experience or an event very similar to that. And of course, we're limited in our knowledge and understanding. So we might see something, not know what it is, and that doesn't mean anything. It just means I don't know. The universe has certain rules to it. Gravity and space and time and things that work together to bring about certain order that eventually then falls into chaos again. And in that span between order and chaos, if life is possible, life will happen. And in the span of when that life happens, that life, if it gets sophisticated enough to wonder why it got there, will ask these sort of questions and try to work it out and say, well, how did I get here? It's so bizarre. It's so amazing. And it is. But to then jump from that to say, well, it can't be just by nature, must be something else, is an unwarranted conclusion. Logic alone cannot be evidence or a proof. The premises in the argument are either true or false. So you must check in with reality to find out if they're true or false. How would I deduce that X is highly improbable? And even if I do, what does that matter? It still happened, no matter how great the odds might be against it. It did happen that way. So maybe the odds just don't matter. We take chances even without realizing it, without wanting to, without being aware. Just existing, we're defying the odds. And that doesn't really mean anything other than that's just how things are. And if you try to make sense of that and then appeal to a deity to say, well, that answers the problem, then the deity itself has to obey the same rules. So if you have a complex universe cannot come to exist on its own because it's too orderly, because it's too coincidental to have just happened, then your God could not have come in, could not exist on its own orderly just because that's what it is, even if it's always existed, unless it breaks the rules, and that takes special pleading. So, take a chance. It's probably not God. But if it is, great. We don't know that through the use of empirical evidence, repeatable testing, or a valid and sound argument. So we have to be skeptical of that conclusion. But faith says, so what? I'll still believe it. Okay. Can't do anything about that. Some brains work that way, and that's fine. That's human nature as well. But at least be honest and say it's faith. Don't pretend that you have some magnificent argument that I or others will not understand because you think you have the probability figured out, because the chances are you don't have any idea what the bleep you're talking about. And even if you did, you couldn't conclude what you want to conclude with that argument anyways, because the odds are still against you. And the fact of the matter is, every single time humans have thought that something was explained by God, they've been shown a naturalistic explanation for it. Lightning, thunder, St. Elmo's fire, diseases, etc. So if you added all that together and then you go, well, the universe, well, then if you think the universe is God and humans have been wrong every other time, then what's the chances that you're going to not be wrong this time? Pretty low. So this argument cannot and will not work. You need a better one. Maybe you can't make one. Maybe nobody can make one. I don't know. I'll see what you have to say in the comments of this video if you happen to believe in a God. And if you don't, let me know what you think about chance or probability, or as they call it, luck. I don't think luck exists. Randomness might not be even a thing. And dice don't remember that they rolled a low number, but they will haunt you with their horrible sense of humor when you need to roll something as small as a 3. They'll be like, no, I'm going to roll 2. And they'll kill you because stupid dice. Anyways, but dice aren't alive. So, thanks for listening. And until next time, stay reasonable and logical and stuff and dice and numbers and dice. Chance. Lobsters.